Never Split the Difference by Voss and Tahl Raz is an essential read for anyone looking to improve their negotiation skills. Written by the former lead international hostage negotiator for the FBI, this book provides valuable insights into how to negotiate in virtually any situation. It covers a wide range of topics including listening techniques, persuasion strategies, and rapport-building methods. The authors draw on decades of experience from law enforcement, as well as business negotiations, to provide useful tactics and tips for dealing with difficult conversations. This book teaches readers how to identify potential deal breakers and how to even turn them into opportunities. By reading Never Split the Difference, you'll also gain an understanding of your own behavior in negotiations, which will help you become more successful over time. Furthermore, the authors provide detailed information on how to develop trust in negotiations and identify when people may be lying or hiding something. Overall, Never Split the Difference is an invaluable resource for anyone looking to improve their negotiation skills, either in business or everyday life. Let's explore all the main ideas of the book Never Split the Difference by Voss and Tahl Raz in this animated book summary. Idea 1. The New Rules. The title of this piece of writing by the author is How to Become the Smartest Person in Any Room, and it tells how the reader can become smarter. Book that has a story from his own life in it. He worked as a mediator for almost 20 years. During that time, he was the FBI's main negotiator in international kidnapping cases. He was now at Harvard Law School for a quick executive negotiation course. He wanted to learn by copying the techniques used in the business world. After being surprised, get ready to negotiate with a small group of faculty members in a simulated setting. His son was taken, and he was told he would die unless he paid $1 million right away. But the author tricked them by asking them a series of leading questions. The professors by asking them over and over again how to send the ransom, which was something they hadn't expected. A year later, he went to Harvard for a negotiation course during the winter session. Once again, he was the best in the class because he had used the best strategies based on logic, value, intellectual power, and moral ideas about fairness in many simulated negotiation situations, and learned from his own experience. Taking hostages is nothing new. People have been doing it since the beginning of time. In the second half of the 20th century, however, this happened more often. The deals made in Munich. Both the tragedy at the Olympics and the uprising at the Attica prison in New York ended in tragedy. After 3 hostages were killed in Florida, the FBI is looking into what happened. After a string of complaints about the New York City Police Department, the FBI and other agencies put together special teams to come up with a plan for how to handle talks about a possible solution that got heated. The Harvard Negotiation Project was started in 1979 with the goal of improving how bargaining is studied, taught, and used. In 1981, the co-founders of the project presented a new thesis called Getting to Yes. The answer yes marked a big change. Separate the person from the issue, don't focus on the problem. Be a part of the other side's camp while looking out for their best interests. Work together to come up with options where everyone can win and agree on how to measure those options. Professors Tversky and Kahneman from the University of Chicago wrote a theory that showed that people are not very logical and that everyone has problems with cognitive bias. They wrote about 150 illogical mental processes, such as A, the framing effect, which shows that people's reactions to the same problem can be different depending on how it's presented. B, the prospect theory, which explains why we ignore danger even when the chance of loss is high. And C, the loss aversion theory, which shows that people are more likely to act in ways that cause a loss or prevent a loss than to act in ways that gain something. All of these ideas were explained in Kahneman's best-selling book from 2011, Thinking, Fast and Slow. He wrote, man has 2 ways of thinking. System 1, our animal mind, is quick, instinctual, and emotional, while System 2 is slow, careful, and logical. Method 1 guides and leads our thinking in a logical way. Later talks with people who were being held hostage proved the getting to yes principle was wrong in practice and didn't get the results that were wanted. The problem was that in normal bargaining situations, trying to solve the problem was not the best approach. Most of the real things that happened were sad. Emotionally driven and getting along with them requires negotiation skills that focus on both the irrational and the emotional. Simple psychological methods and techniques were needed to help reduce anxiety, build trust and friendship, and encourage open communication and compassion. This work is about a big idea called tactical empathy, which is what drives it. We need to be good negotiators to get what we want out of life, and this book helps us get there. Idea 2. Try being a mirror for other people. This chapter, How to Quickly Establish Rapport, tells us how to avoid awkward situations when we're meeting someone for the first time. Use methods like parallax, silence, and the voice of the late-night FM DJ to replace assumptions that new negotiators might find confusing. In September 1993, masked men robbed a Chase Manhattan bank branch in Brooklyn. They beat up the security guard and locked up a teller. At the time, the author was a member of the FBI and told them about the hostage situation. When a member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force and a colleague finally got to the scene, they found it surrounded by officers from several agencies, including the New York Police Department and the Special Weapons and Tactics Unit. There were several teams spread out around the bank, each with a different view. To get the hostages back, it was necessary to talk to the thieves. The author stresses how important it is for negotiators to have skills that allow them to find potential surprises by asking questions. The goal is to find out as much information as possible. At first, people thought that this hostage crisis would end quickly and that the people holding the hostages were ready to give up. This is what the leader of the group said. He gave the negotiators mixed messages and led them astray on purpose to confuse them. Was talking about his group and what they wanted, but by the time the police got there, it was too late. By the time the police arrived, the getaway driver and 3 of the criminals had already left. Only 2 criminals were still in the bank with the hostages. One of these 2 thieves was clearly in charge, while the other was just along for the ride. Some details didn't come out until some time had passed. The FBI team set up a negotiation operations center, NOC, close to the bank, which put them at a disadvantage because there was no buffer between them and the bank. The author's job was to coach Joe, the police negotiator, on how to listen to the robbers' conversations and figure out what their counterparts needed to feel safe and work with them. The chief robber asked for an escape van several times so that he, his partner, and the other robbers could, hopefully, feel like the hostages were in good hands. Joe was doing a great job of talking to him while the other investigators searched the area, figured out what cars were there, and talked to the owners of each one. Except for one, which they correctly identified as belonging to a thief named Chris Watts. Joe let the author do most of the talking. To calm down the ringleader, Joe used a soothing tone he called the FM DJ tone. He was able to calm down the situation by asking to talk with one of the hostages. A woman used what has been called cut-off speech when she said, "I'm okay," and then she was cut off. By asking the thief the same questions over and over, the author was able to learn even more about the getaway car and its driver. When the author asked the ringleader if he was Chris Watts, as expected, he said no. When another thief took over the conversation, the author recognized him as Chris. Even though he was hesitant at first, this man now seemed eager to get away, and you could hear how relieved he was. The first phase, the negotiation team was able to get him to run away and give up. Dominic, who took over for the author and was an experienced hostage negotiator, finally got Chris Watts and the other hostages to give up. We must slow things down and make the other side feel safe enough to open up. Tell the difference between wants, aspirations, and needs, the bare minimum for a deal, and pay close attention to what the other side is saying. Use the voice of a late-night FM DJ and start with, "I'm sorry." Then say mirror. Wait at least 4 seconds for the mirror to work its magic on your partner, and say it again. If you are enjoying this animated book summary, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, make sure you check our app Morfosis after the video. We have more animated book summaries on our app. Click the link in the description to get a 7-day free trial. Idea 3. Make them feel like you really understand them. Human psychology is based on the idea that people want to be heard and valued. This is true in negotiations as well as in all other interactions with other people. If you can make the other person feel heard, your conversation will go much better and be more polite. Active listening and mirroring, which were covered in the first 2 chapters, are 2 of these. Ways to make the other person feel like they are being heard and understood. Voss also suggests using a technique called labeling, which involves saying what the other person is probably thinking or feeling at the time. Most of the time, these statements start with "it looks like," "it seems like," or "is it true that?" Studies at UCLA have shown that when people name an emotion out loud, activity in the fear center of the brain goes down. This makes the other person less defensive and more likely to listen to what you have to say, especially in situations that could get heated, like negotiations. Idea 4. Get them to say no. People say yes to things all the time, but they don't always mean it. This is one of the surprising pieces of advice Voss gives in Never Split the Difference. Also, the ways you could try to get them to say yes might make them feel trapped or manipulated, which would backfire in the end. This is why you should try to get the other side to say no. But when they hear a firm no, they may feel like they have more power. Since they no longer feel threatened, they are more relaxed and willing to listen to what you have to say. They are also less likely to go into fight or flight mode, and more likely to use their brain power to come up with a good solution. So, how does this really work? If you're in a negotiation with someone who just won't work with you, one strategy is to ask a question that forces them to say no. Do you think I'm wrong? To ask, are you against something? Could it be that I'm going too far here? Are you sure there's nothing more to talk about? Voss says you'll be happy with the results if you try it. People like to feel like they've been turned down, so you shouldn't fight this urge by trying too hard to get a yes. Idea 5. Just 2 words can change the negotiation. Chris Voss says that "that's right" and "yes" are the most important words in any negotiation because they show that the other person has been heard and understood. This is why it's important to sum up the other person's point of view and have them say "that's right" to confirm that you've got it right. Voss talks about the time he was in charge of negotiations with the jihadi militant group Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines in 2000. The group had taken an American man named Jeffrey Schilling, who was 24 years old, hostage and asked for $10 million in ransom. A police officer in the Philippines acted as a go-between for Voss and the group's leader, who was adamant that Muslims in the Philippines had been mistreated for centuries and should be given war damages because of this. After months of writing back and forth, Voss finally told the officer to give the leader a full rundown of everything the leader thought about oppression. After that, everyone in the conversation started saying things that made sense, and the mood quickly improved. The hostage was freed without any talk of paying war damages or a ransom. Because of this plan, a man's life was saved. As with many of Voss's other strategies, the key to this one is to think like the other side. Attacking the other side to get them to see things your way is not a good way to do it. Need to focus on getting the other side to slowly and softly let down their defenses. Best way for both parties to benefit. Idea 6. Change how they see the world. Don't give in or try to find something you can agree on. Even though it might feel deceptive or even dishonest, we need to try to change how the other side sees the world in order to come to a deal. There are a lot of different needs and wants that depend on each other, and we try to meet as many of them as we can find an easy answer. The logic of compromise says that the best way to reach a deal is to give the other side half of what they want and hope to come to this agreement because it will make everyone happy. Never settle for a middle ground. If you meet the other person in the middle, you will both end up with bad deals. A win-win approach doesn't work, and it could even turn out badly, only leads to bad things. Stop getting stressed out by deadlines and the word fair and learn to value your time. There is a link between deadlines and how quickly people negotiate. People use the word fair to justify doing things that aren't in their best interests. The word fair makes people think of their opponent's defenses and how they can win favoritism if they play hard to get. Do not feel trapped by the word fair. Instead, ask for more information about how you are being unfair. Change the way they see the world. If you can change the other person's reference point, you can change how he sees the world. When you make the offer, you need to hit them where it hurts, in the heart. Now is the time to talk about numbers, so use a strong anchor to build a dark picture of the real world. Positivity is important, but if you're nervous about making an offer, a range can help you avoid coming off as aggressive. People will go to greater lengths, and even take greater risks, to avoid a loss than they do to have something to gain, and make it clear to the other person that if they don't move in the right direction, they will lose something. Some suggestions to get someone to do what you want, anchoring their emotions, can help set low expectations and then beat them. This will make them feel like they've already lost. Most of the time, let the other person go first, but not always. Give an estimate. Don't talk about specific numbers to keep the negotiation open. Use odd numbers. Idea 7. Create the illusion of control. The listener, rather than the talker, controls a conversation. This is because a talker is revealing information, while a trained listener is taking the conversation toward his own goals. The following tools are to assist you in utilizing the other party's power to accomplish your objective. Listener's judo is a way for someone to use the strength and resources of another person in a way that helps them reach their own goals. You shouldn't ask the other person leading questions that are meant to get them to agree with you. Small answers that don't require much thought and can be answered with yes. It's a give and take deal, so you'll have to give something back. How questions are measured and how important they are. Calibrated questions are questions that start with how or what. If you ask the other person for help, they will feel like they have some kind of power and be more willing to open up and talk. By starting every sentence with why, unless you want the other person to defend something that will help you. The word why makes every question sound like an accusation. Get the other person to answer your questions in a way that will help you solve your problem. During negotiations, if the other side attacks you, take a deep breath and keep your emotions in check so you can ask a well-timed question. Remember that the other side always has a team on their side, and if you can't get them to see things your way, you leave yourself open to being hurt. Try to get them to like you and become your fans. Some prime requirements. How do you feel about this event if it's important to you? Please tell me what I can do to help us. How far do you want me to go along these lines? How did we get into this mess, please? What can we do to fix this? To what end are we working? What do you want me to do? Plan that might be useful. If someone breaks a promise, this is what you can do. Send a no-oriented query in an email to someone you've lost touch with to get in touch with them again. Have you given up on trying to work this out in a friendly way? Use when responding to a statement with "that's right." Tell people come to an agreement. It looks like you don't think my idea is a good one. Ask the other side well-thought-out questions about the topic to get them to think. How does this idea break our agreement? Try asking more no questions to find and get rid of hidden roadblocks. Use the other person's own words against them by figuring out what their most important reactions are and imitating them. That he might look at them again if he thinks they aren't good. When he makes an offer that doesn't cover everything, ask him a well-thought-out question in the hopes that he'll explain or come up with a solution. If you haven't already been offered full payment, don't be surprised if you have to use a term that plays into his sense of entitlement to power and influence. After some time has passed, try asking another question that focuses on no. Idea 8. Guaranteed execution. Top negotiators know that it takes more than just talking to reach an agreement. Where a successful transaction happens when hidden information that is clearly communicated is found and used. The next step is to make sure that the solutions to these fundamental problems are really put into place. Yes is useless without how. In negotiations, saying yes without saying how doesn't get you very far. How aware, and how defined. Ask how questions carefully. Use these questions again and again to confuse the other side, but don't stop there. Keep them busy, because answering these questions will make them feel like they've done something. You'll make them think you're in charge, and when they make a decision, they'll think about your problems. Why it's very important to ask how. Use how questions to get a sense of the negotiation landscape. By saying "how can I do that?" instead of "no," you're subtly telling the other person to look to you for solutions, which may make them do something they wouldn't do otherwise. Think about the big picture, not just the people you're talking to at the moment. How to read the people behind the table, so you can predict how they will act in a trade and use that information to your advantage. Affect how other people feel and whether or not they agree with you about certain things. The 7 to 38-55 percentage is a rule of thumb. This rule says that the actual words used can only be responsible for 7% of a message. 55% of it comes from the way the speaker's face and body moves. Use the 7 to 38-55% rule by paying special attention to nonverbal cues like body language and tone of voice. If a person's actions and words don't match up, they're either lying or don't like a transaction enough. We'll explain this using the rule of 3. Yes includes commitment, confirmation, and the word yes. The rule of 3 can be used to find out if a yes is real or a fake. Use descriptors, summaries, and scaled questions to do this. Make the other person say they agree at least 3 times, since it's hard to lie when you're being very clear. How the pronouns tell the story. You can tell how powerful someone is by the pronouns they use. First-person pronouns like I, my, and me show that the author thinks of himself as the most important person in the situation. If there are a lot of we, they, and them references, it means that someone else is being talked about. You should use your real name here. The best thing that can happen is if the other side treats you like a person and agrees to your terms. Using your kindness and sense of humor is a great way to get past problems. Idea 9. Be willing to walk away. Before you go into a negotiation, you should know at least as much as what Voss writes. How much you're willing to spend before you walk away, or at what price you'll just say no. When will this deal no longer be good for me? Trying to reach a deal where everyone wins is a good thing to do, but it's not always possible. Nothing in life is perfectly balanced. The pendulum always moves, if only slightly, in one direction or the other. Your negotiating skills will help you build and keep good relationships with the other side. Different one-time deals, especially in the context of a business partnership, are not legally binding. In general, one-time deals are less profitable than long-term partnerships because their goal is to take advantage of the other party. But it can't be denied that some negotiators go into talks with the clear goal of getting as much for themselves as they can, without giving the other side any thought. Especially if you run into these kinds of people often, it's important to have a firm grasp on your starting point. Even if the other side is serious about coming to a win-win agreement, negotiations will inevitably get down to the details. When talking about money comes up in a negotiation, it's important to know where on a range of numbers you'll be willing to walk away. Concessions. What do you do if the other side has given you a number that you think is a walkaway number, but you still think there is room for improvement in the negotiation? Ask questions that aren't directly about money to keep things interesting. You could talk about the details of the deal, or you could just say, "I see how you came to this conclusion. I appreciate the offer and would like to take you up on it, but I can't at the moment because of things I can't change. Could you maybe suggest a solution that would work for both of us?" Value being heard, but they won't pay attention to other people's points of view until they feel like their own have been heard. There are ways to deal with an assertive person and make yourself seem like you're listening and understanding. Mirroring, classifying, and summarizing are all great ways to do this. And measured questions. They focus on themselves instead of the needs of others. A lack of urgency about the topic at hand. The submissive type sees silence as a sign of the other person's displeasure, but the aggressive type sees silence as an invitation to talk more. To negotiate well, you need to know the other person's position and what they want. Voss says that you should do the opposite of the golden rule and treat people the way you would like to be treated, according to how they want to be treated. If you feel like you're not getting anywhere in a negotiation, there are ways to change things up. Voss says that a little assertiveness at the right time can help you take the lead in a conversation. Using the first-person singular, I, to show dissatisfaction with a bad deal. Having a ready-to-walk attitude can keep you from being stuck in a bad relationship or situation. Don't attack the other person personally and try not to see them as the enemy. Instead, focus on the details of the trade at hand. Even as you use these methods to set limits, your ultimate goal should be to build a cooperative, caring, and productive relationship with the other person. Voss ends by explaining what he calls the Ackerman bargaining model for how to negotiate. In a negotiation, setting an asking price is the first step toward making a counteroffer. For example, let's say your landlord wants too much rent and you want to try to negotiate a lower rate. Your budget allows for $1,000 in payments each month, so that's the price you should aim for. Then you make your first offer at 65% of the price you want to pay. Your first offer to your landlord is $650 per month. When they say no, you raise the amount by 85%, 95%, and 100%, bringing it to $850, $950, and $1,100 respectively. $950, then your goal price of $1,000, and then any adjustments you need to make to get to the final price. Round it up to the next full number, say $9,967, and then throw in something free to make the deal more appealing. Idea 10. Try to find the best deal you can. The last step of negotiating is bargaining, which most people try to avoid. Voss says that to bargain well, you need to get rid of any ideas you already have. How it feels to bargain, and how to pick up on the subtle psychological signs of the strategies and identities people use when bargaining. The better you are at reading them, the more likely it is that you will be able to make good deals. Over the course of our lives, we each come up with our own way of negotiating. Influences on their lives from the time they were kids until now. There are many things that affect how people learn and grow, including how they negotiate. If you want to play to your strengths and be honest about your weaknesses, you need to develop your own style of negotiating. Learn your opponent's strengths and weaknesses and how to adapt to their style and attitude in order to create a place where people can talk freely and work together. There are several kinds of communicators, including analyzers, adapters, and a sign of an excellent communicator is the ability to use aggressive language when the situation calls for all of them. In the style of an analyst, analysts go into negotiations with a cool, calm, and thorough mind. Systematizing the best possible result is their #1 goal. That keeps you from making mistakes, even if it takes longer than planned to finish the job. They naturally take on the voice of a late-night FM DJ, but because they are so focused on details and accuracy, their voice may sound cold and distant instead of soothing. Analyst-style negotiators do a lot of work to prepare for talks, and they want something in return. Voss says that if you feel this way most of the time, the analyst's silence doesn't mean he or she is angry, but rather that he or she is thinking about the situation. Better relationship with the other person during the negotiation and to build rapport, use more upbeat body language. The method of being flexible. The best way for an accommodator to talk to someone is to find something they have in common with them. They want outcomes that are good for both sides. They value open lines of communication, and they want to make lasting bonds with others. Likely to be able to build a strong relationship, but have trouble making any of the arguments. They want to understand each other and find it easy to get along. People who use their tone of voice to show warmth and empathy may be hard to figure out because they hide their real goals. To gloss over controversial issues to avoid conflict, and calibrated questions can help bring these goals to the surface and put the accommodator's talk into action. One who isn't afraid to stand up for themselves. People who are sure of themselves value their time and judge their success by how many things they can do in a short amount of time. They are enthusiastic, honest, and like to win. Their way of talking is direct, and they put getting things done first. You can show that you listened and understood by mirroring, classifying, and summarizing. And measured questions. They focus on themselves instead of the needs of others, a lack of urgency about the topic at hand. The submissive type sees silence as a sign of the other person's displeasure, but the aggressive type sees silence as an invitation to talk more. To negotiate well, you need to know the other person's position and what they want. Voss says that you should do the opposite of the golden rule and treat people the way you would like to be treated, according to how they want to be treated. If you feel like you're not getting anywhere in a negotiation, there are ways to change things up. Voss says that a little assertiveness at the right time can help you take the lead in a conversation. Using the first-person singular I to show dissatisfaction with a poor deal. If you have a ready-to-walk attitude, you won't get stuck in a bad relationship or situation. Don't attack the other person personally and try not to see them as the enemy. Instead, focus on the details of the trade at hand. Even as you use these methods to set limits, your ultimate goal should be to build a cooperative, caring, and productive relationship with the other person. Voss ends by explaining what he calls the Ackerman bargaining model for how to negotiate. In a negotiation, setting an asking price is the first step toward making a counteroffer. For example, let's say your landlord wants too much rent and you want to try to negotiate a lower rate. Your budget allows for $1,000 in payments each month, so that's the price you should aim for. Then you make your first offer at 65% of the price you want to pay. Your first offer to your landlord is $650 per month. When they say no, you raise the amount by 85%, 95%, and 100%, bringing it to $850, $950, and $1,100, respectively. $950, then your goal price of $1,000, and then any adjustments you need to make to get to the final price. Round it up to the next whole number, say $9,967, and then throw in something free to make the deal more appealing. Idea 11. Find the black swan. Voss thinks that black swans are secret, unplanned bits of information that can lead to unplanned events that change the whole course of a negotiation. The unknown unknowns are the things that can come up in the middle of a negotiation and throw off everyone's plans. In any deal, you should always be on the lookout for the black swan, for any new information that could change the way the negotiations go. Ask them open-ended questions and then listen carefully to what they say. It's hard to find a black swan, but if you do, It will change the course of your career for good. Okay, let's sum it all up. These are all the main ideas of the book Never Split the Difference. Idea 1, the new rules. Idea 2, try being a mirror for other people. Idea 3, make them feel like you really understand them. Idea 4, get them to say no. Idea 5, just 2 words can change the negotiation. Idea 6, change how they see the world. Idea 7, create the illusion of control. Idea 8, guaranteed execution. Idea 9, be willing to walk away. Idea 10, try to find the best deal you can. Idea 11, find the black swan. Love this book summary? Watch the full summary in our app. If you find that reading is becoming a chore, then you need Morfosis. Our app delivers key insights from nonfiction books in easy-to-digest animated summaries. With our 7-day free trial, there's nothing to lose. Get the knowledge you need without hours of reading. Start your free trial today by clicking the link in the description below.